Kettlebell exercises are a great total body strengthening workout, but you have to make sure that you do them properly, otherwise you can get injured. In this video, I'll introduce you to 5 great kettlebell exercises that are great for seniors and beginners. And by beginners, I mean people who are new to kettlebell training. If you've never exercised in your life, kettlebells may not be the place to start. But kettlebell exercises are more accessible than most people may think. Now, some people may wonder, are kettlebell exercises actually safe for seniors? And in the vast majority of cases, I would say, yes, they are, provided that you use correct technique. So that's what I'll explain in this video. So let's get started with the exercises. The first exercise is one of the most fundamental movements in kettlebell training, and that's a deadlift or a hip hinge. To do a deadlift, you want to face sideways to the kettlebell, and you want to stack your trunk. So kind of roll your pelvis under just a little bit, breathe out, so you exert pressure through your abdominal muscles. This brings your rib cage closer to your pelvis and puts your spine in a neutral position. Now from here, you want to push your hips back, maintaining that neutral position. So you don't want to allow your lower back to round out like this to pick up the kettlebell. You also don't want to go into an excessive amount of back arch. So do a slight pelvic tilt, blow out, stack your trunk over your pelvis, and then push your hips back, keeping that neutral spine position. Your knees should bend some, but you're also not going down into a squat. So just push the hips back, allow the knees to bend naturally, and then from here, your motion is going to be driving the hips back forwards. So this isn't a back extension exercise. It's just really thinking hips back, hips forward, hips back, hips forward. So go down into that hinge, grab onto the kettlebell, drive your hips back forwards into the kettlebell, and then drive your hips back. Now this should ideally be a little bit quicker of a movement. I was just showing it in slow-mo, but in real life, this is what it would look like. You roll the pelvis under, stack the trunk, push the hips back, drive forwards. Come back down at a moderate pace. You don't want to go super slow, but you also don't want to slam the kettlebell down on the floor. So hips back, come up and back down. Come up and back down. Come up and back down. And so that's the first movement, the deadlift. From here, the next movement is going to follow naturally from the deadlift. And that's going to be probably the most well-known kettlebell exercise, the kettlebell swing. This is going to be sort of the same deadlift type movement, but we're going to add an arm motion into it. Now, this isn't an arm motion like you do a front raise with dumbbells like this. It's going to be a swing of the kettlebell where you're using that power from your deadlift type motion to create momentum with the kettlebell. It helps to step back from the kettlebell a little bit, turn it on its side as you hinge down, and this way, as you come back up, it has a little bit of backswing already, which helps you create the forward swing as you go forwards. So again, step back about a foot from the kettlebell, pull it down onto its side, bring it back between the legs, and that's going to be sort of the starting position. So you turn it on its side, bring it back, deadlift, 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 deadlift. Now, a couple points to take note of. One, again, this isn't an arm swing exercise. You're using your hips to create the momentum to drive the kettlebell forwards. Additionally, as you come up to this top position, you don't want to back arch like this. You want to keep that trunk stack position, abdominals tight, hips come forwards, and you're actually kind of stopping yourself with your abdominals rather than going backwards. So even though this looks like a back extension movement, you're actually really using your abdominals to stop that back extension. So again, to see it full speed, step back from the kettlebell, pull it on its side, back swing, drive through, drive through, drive through. Now to see that from the front, here's what the motion looks like. Now you can actually do a progression off this exercise, moving to a single arm kettlebell swing. I'm going to include this in the same general kettlebell swing exercise. But a progression would be to just go to one arm. Now, one thing you have to note with one arm is that there's more of a rotational component to control. So as you come up and come down, the movement is naturally going to want to go like this. You want to try to create as much of a forward-backward motion as possible. So you grab on here, come up, and back down. Now, if you just let this go, the intent is going to kind of want to swing out that way. You want to try to, again, keep it as straightforward and backwards as possible. And then same thing with the other arm. Bring it back, drive forwards, drive forwards, drive forwards, drive forwards. So that's the second exercise, the kettlebell swing. The third exercise is going to be a goblet squat. To get the kettlebell up into a goblet squat, traditionally what you would do is called a goblet clean. To do this, you'll grab the kettlebell, you'll come up like this, and use your momentum to keep the kettlebell coming up, and then switch your hands into a goblet hold like this. So to see that in full speed, come up like that, switch to a goblet hold. Your forearm should be relatively parallel and the bell more or less in front of your face. So you're not holding it out here using your biceps. Your forearm should be vertical. And this is pretty easy to hold once you get it up like this. If you can't do this, this particular kettlebell, the Runway brand, actually has handles on the sides. And for some people, it's easier as you're just getting started to use these side handles to hold on rather than doing that goblet clean and coming up into a position like this. So to see this from the side, you'll do the goblet clean. You're up in position like this, or use the side handles, and then you'll go down into a squat like this and come back up. Now again, you want to keep a neutral spine position, so you don't want to arch your back excessively like this. You also don't want to let the weight get too far away from you where it pulls you down into a rounded back position like this. So keep your forearms relatively vertical, whether you're gripping here or whether you're gripping there. Go down into a squat and then back up. Now, if you can't do a body weight squat, I would start out with some of my other videos that show how to do a body weight squat correctly. But once you've mastered that, come up into the goblet position, squat down, try to get down to parallel if you can. If you can't get there, just go as far as you feel comfortable going. Don't hurt your knees when doing this. And then work up to doing 10 to 15 or more repetitions like that. If you can do more than 15 repetitions, you're probably ready to move up to a higher weight. Now, of note, these Runway brand kettlebells do go from 5 pounds to 20 pounds, so they are pretty good for beginners. Now, the next exercise is going to be a lunge. The lunge is a little bit more asymmetrical than a squat. You'll step forward with one leg and hold the kettlebell in the opposite hand, and then lower down towards the floor until the bell hits the floor. Now, you may notice from the side that the bell hits the floor before your knee in some cases. And if you're just starting out with kettlebell training, this may be okay. However, if you do want to be able to go down a little bit deeper, you can turn this type of kettlebell on its side and then get down a little closer towards the floor like this. Now, another note with lunges, if you put your weight more forwards on your toes, that's going to emphasize your quadriceps more. If you keep the weight sat back more towards your heel, that's going to emphasize your glutes more. So this is more of a glute lunge and quadricep dominant lunge like that. So that's the lunge. And the next exercise is going to be a shoulder press. To do a shoulder press, you have to get the kettlebell up to your shoulder. Now, the traditional way that you do this with a kettlebell is what's called a rack clean. To do this, you'll turn the kettlebell sideways like this, grab with sort of a twisted grip this way, and then it's very much like the goblet clean from before, but you're just doing it with one arm. So you pull up, the kettlebell wraps around, and you're in a rack position with your forearm relatively vertical and the kettlebell sort of behind your forearm this way. So to see that again, you'll twist the forearm, hold the kettlebell with one hand, use your legs to drive up, pull, and then whip. So your elbow's dropping down and underneath, so your forearm is vertical. So drop down, pull, whip like that. Now, if you can't do that, that is a little hard for people who are just beginning. You can just grab the side of the bell like this, use the handle to pull it back over, and you're in a rack position. From here, you're just going to press up overhead like this. You can use 2 kettlebells if you have them, although you do get some core work doing asymmetrical work like this. So both are good options. Now, one advantage of using a kettlebell over a dumbbell is that for many people, when they're pressing, they tend to go up like this, which is really not the position you want. You want to keep your shoulder back in external rotation. When you use a kettlebell, the weight is actually a little bit behind your elbow, and so it keeps you in a relative more amount of external rotation than if you were able to come forwards like this with a dumbbell. So again, if you're going to do the clean from the floor, you'll pull up like this, whip it around, press, 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 press. Again, work up to 10 to 15 repetitions on each arm before increasing weight. Clean up, bring it around, press, 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 press. So those were the 5 kettlebell exercises for seniors and beginners. If you found those a little bit too complex, check out this video on bodyweight strengthening exercises, or if you'd like to learn some dumbbell strengthening exercises, check out this video over here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.